Yeah, you're getting me today. So Jeff Hardy was on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, and that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. He talked about WWE matches that he hated, TNA, aborted ideas, and fights with Vince McMahon. So I'm in a bit of a weird mood today. Let's get into it. Here are 10 things we learned from Jeff Hardy on Stone Cold Podcast. Number 10, Jeff Hardy hates the Razor Ramon match. So Jeff Hardy's first match in WWE wasn't even as Jeff Hardy, it was as Keith Davis on a June 1994 episode of Monday Night Raw. He faced Razor Ramon, and after it, he decided he didn't want to wrestle ever again. I wonder why that might be. Could it be because Scott Hall kicked the crap out of a young jobber back in the day? Yeah, probably. Thankfully, though, a few nights later, Jeff Hardy wrestled the 1-2-3 Kid on an episode of Superstars and found Waltman's speed a bit more of his thing, basically. So once again, we sit here and talk about how important Sean Waltman is to this business. Put some respect on that guy's name. Number 9, his first WWE wage. This is the kind of thing that would never fly nowadays. Jeff earned a measly $150 as a jobber back in his early WWF days. And I know what you're thinking, $150 isn't great, but it's bearable, I suppose. Yeah, except when you find out that the Italian Stallion, the guy who trained the Hardys and had taken a portion once they got booked for recommending them, took $100 of that. 2/3 is a bit of a piss take, isn't it? I mean, I get it. He's a journeyman pro who can introduce them to the right people in the business, but not for 66% of what they get bloody paid. 66.6% if you're going to be specific about it. Anyway, they soon found out they could get bookings through Chief Jay Strongbow and told the Italian Stallion, presumably, to shove it. Number 8. He feels paranormal in WWE today. Jeff has come a long way since those $50 payoffs. He's a lot more settled and secure in his life nowadays, but he did admit to Austin that he feels like he stands out in the wrong way in the current locker room. He's still not sure whether or not he should be there this late in his career. That doesn't mean, though, that he's not interested in trying new things. He talked about being open to new ideas and potentially even returning to live events. He only works TVs at the moment, but he did say he does feel, quote, paranormal compared to some of the younger roster backstage. Now, is this a subtle tease for the arrival of Willow in WWE? You can but dream. Number 7, Jeff never pitches ideas to Vince McMahon. So let's say, for example, he does want to bring the Willow character into WWE. You would assume that Jeff Hardy would just go and knock on Vince McMahon's door, considering the tenure he has had in WWE. But that is not the case. Jeff explained that back in the day, it was Matt Hardy who was, quote, more of a businessman who would take the ideas to Vince, but now he's obviously off in AEW. Jeff, when he wants to pitch something, doesn't go to Vince, but goes to Michael Hayes, who's obviously got a bit of history with the Hardy Boys as well, and he will relay that to Vince and bring back a yes or no answer. I was astonished to see this, considering, yeah, you just assume legends like that just have a direct line to the boss, but apparently Jeff prefers it this way, and who wouldn't? Let's take a moment to remember Michael Hayes and his bum bag from Ric Flair's wedding. Lovely. Number 6, how his body is his bike. Growing up, Hardy revealed he wanted to play baseball for the Atlanta Braves, or maybe even get into motocross, but he knew that would be costly. So he settled on the idea that his body would be his bike, and instead of doing mad stunts on a dirt bike, he'd just do insane stuff with his body instead. Slight issue I'm going to point out right now: if you break your dirt bike, you can just buy a new one. Your body is the one you're stuck with, and trust me, I know. Now, thankfully, Austin was relieved when Jeff seemed to suggest that those really bonkers stunts, the TLCs that we all remember him for, those sorts of things are maybe behind him. But Jeff says that despite them being behind him, he doesn't regret them one damn bit. Although I bet he does when he wakes up in the middle of the night. Ouch. Number 5, the planned ending of that TNA match. Jeff does, however, regret this sorry incident. TNA Victory Road 2011, a show that will live in infamy for a variety of reasons, but particularly that main event. We all remember it, even if we weren't fans of TNA at the time. Hardy, clearly, let's just say, impaired, coming out, and Sting very quickly putting him away with a Scorpion Death Drop before effectively just holding him down to get the match to be over in, what, like 90 seconds? Jeff reveals in the interview, though, that the ending of the match would have been pretty awesome, if slightly terrifying. He apparently was supposed to eat a Scorpion Death Drop with a chair wrapped around his neck. Now, Jeff is still a little bit despondent about this match, understandably. Over 10 years later, he talks about the fact that Sting's a childhood idol of his. He still remember touching his arm at a show he attended when he was just 12 years of age. He's gutted that he put a hero of his through that, but obviously personal demons, well, they were what they were for Jeff Hardy. But if you're a fan of TNA, it's not all bad. Number 4, TNA gets lots of love. It's fair to say Jeff had a few ups and downs in TNA. He was world champion, but then he was also world champion with that belt that he drew, I assume. Look, putting aside the excruciating embarrassment of Victory Road 2011, Jeff says he loved his couple of stints in TNA and he was very grateful for the company to take him in after all the times he, well, buggered up in WWE, basically. He's very proud of a match that he had with Austin Aries at Bound for Glory 2012, which he says drew a big crowd. And for him, aside from the sheer size and scale, there wasn't really much difference between WWE and TNA. Nowadays, not so much, of course, although it does feel like some of TNA's booking has gone on to WWE. Number 3, he had words with Vince at Mania 25. And not just words, fighting words. If you remember back all those years ago to WrestleMania 25, that card was stacked. Not only were we getting Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker along with all the world title stuff, we were also getting a blood feud between the Hardy Boys, an Extreme Rules match nonetheless. And then on the night, it just sort of happened. It passed us by, and let's be honest, it was a bit of a 13-minute disappointment. Well, according to Hardy, the reason for that is just before the Hardys walked through the curtain to go out and have their match, they were told to cut the bollocks off of it to save time for later on in the card. Hence why the 13 minutes weren't the explosion of extreme brother-on-brother violence we were all hoping for. And according to Jeff as well, when he walked back through the curtain, he made a beeline for Vince McMahon, and he was pissed. To be fair to him, he said that Vince McMahon sort of understood his passion, but Vince reiterated that he needed to save time for later on in the card, which on the one hand is fair enough. Taker and HBK going half an hour was epic. But then we had Orton and bloody Triple H going 25 minutes in that god-awful main event. Why is it always Triple H at Mania? Get to the point, Paul! Number 2, the elusive Broken Penitentiary match. Ooh, now this one would have been interesting. Jeff and Austin in the interview dive into the whole broken universe that Matt pioneered in TNA, and then Jeff reveals that when the boys returned to WWE in 2017, they had the idea of a broken penitentiary match against the Usos, leading into the whole Usos penitentiary thing. It would be a cinematic match before, well, we had any cinematic matches really, but certainly before we got bloody sick of them, and it would take place in an abandoned old prison. Lord knows why creative decided to turn this idea down. I, for one, would have loved to have seen it, but it can just be added to the long list of crazy ideas that almost happened in WWE. You know what? Someone should really write a book about that, and if they did, they could probably sell it at whatculture.bigcartel.com alongside books about, oh, I don't know, 606 wrestling matches to see before you die, NXT, development hell, I'd probably call it, or even a new book all about Becoming All Elite by What Culture's very own Michael Sidgwick. If you want any of those, whatculture.bigcartel.com. Number 1. His 2 remaining WWE goals. Jeff basically uses Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull sessions as a bit of a platform to call out Roman Reigns and pitch a feud against him, which does make sense, to be fair, considering they're both on the SmackDown brand following Jeff Hardy's move in the 2021 brand. And Stone Cold doesn't stand in his way. Basically, Jeff says there is 2 things that he wants to do left in the company, and they gel quite nicely. He'd quite like to feud with Roman Reigns, and he'd quite like to be Universal Champion. And I, for one, think that is a blatantly obvious match WWE need to put on a pay-per-view. Which one? Who cares? Look, at time of recording, Roman doesn't have an opponent for day 1. Maybe it could be one of those epic Royal Rumble matches where you know that the champion's probably going to retain, but gosh darn it, you're rooting for his opponent. Or perhaps Jeff Hardy could be a post-WrestleMania opponent if Roman retains on the grandest stage of them all. Look, Jeff Hardy doesn't have very long left, does he, Stone Cold? Oh, hell no. And yeah, if you're going to do something with him, better that than chasing around Reggie for that bloody stupid title. So make the most of him. What do you think to that, Stone Cold Steve Austin? Oh, hell yeah. I pulled his leg off. Steven, what's happened to your leg? So there you have it, 10 things we learned. I fixed the leg back on Jeff Hardy's appearance on Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions podcast. If you like podcasts, by the way, the What Culture Wrestling podcast, wherever you get your podcasts from. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you can let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE, where you can also find me and my wonderful moustache at Adam Wilborn. Thanks for watching. I've been Adam from What Culture, and we will see you soon.